And we are live. Welcome, FloodGate family. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm Danny Searing. This is Joe McClung. And we are here today, the FloodGate Medical headquarters here in Tampa, Florida, downstairs in the Dazzle Den.
We like the word dazzling, as you can see.
And we thought it was appropriate for today because we've got our first ever Ask Us Anything. Well, almost anything, as we said,
yes.
right?
Almost anything.
And Improving Lives, which in a perfect world is placing candidates with our awesome clients, but we're cognizant of the fact that we can't always do that. And Improving Lives is also giving back to the community and answering questions that we know everybody has about job search, about interviewing, whatever it may be. And truthfully, 2023 has been a pretty crazy year.
Seen a lot of changes. Medtronic, J&J, funding at the startups. There's been a lot of, there's been some disruption.
Unfortunately, and I mean, I know I've noticed that you probably have too. There's some phenomenal candidates on the market, probably more now than has been over the last 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely.
And when you're on the market, especially the candidates that haven't searched for a job in a while, right? A lot of those best candidates, you probably have questions, and it's tough to take the time to reach out to somebody to ask those questions, but then also B, find a solid source and answer of information. And so we're coming in here live today to answer any and everything that you have. There's no question too big. There's no question too small that you can ask. So drop those questions over there on the right. But to kick things off, I mean, what would you say is one of the most common questions that you get?
Danny, you hit the nail on that. Most of the time, people I'm talking to, they're like, I haven't interviewed or had to search for a job since college because I get tapped in the shoulder. I got pulled in another one. So most of the time they're like, what in the heck do I do? I'm lost, right? And they don't know where to start. So what I've really found has helped, especially when I'm dealing with a lot of commercial executives, is I say, stop. Don't think of this as a job search, something you haven't done since college or at least 10 to 15 years. But think about it as something you've done a lot in your life. And all of them have launched a lot of products. And if they just think about this as not a job search, but they're just launching a product called Joe, for instance, right? And if I think of that and I put myself in that perspective, the first thing you do whenever you launch a product is you start, what's that value proposition? What's that core uniqueness that makes my experience, my personality really exciting for a company that brings the most value? Sometimes you have to ask friends and former colleagues what that is, right, to align on it. Then you got to think about who's going to care, right? It's just like launching a product. Where's that value proposition going to have the most impact? If I spent my whole career in cardiology, and that's what I really understand, and I understand a cath lab, well, I think companies that are in cath lab and cardiology are going to appreciate the value I bring, right? So with those two pieces of information, you step back and then go, I'm going to create my marketing material, right? And the marketing material is twofold. Your webpage, which is your LinkedIn profile, right? That's your personal webpage in the job search. And then your brochure, that's your resume. Most people don't even think of the resume as a brochure, but it really is. And in today's day and age, I don't think I have to tell anyone that's launched a product which of the two is most important. It's the website. The website, right? So when you're creating that LinkedIn profile, make sure you're, using like SEO, keywords that highlights it. Your resume should also pop. And then the second step, once your marketing side, now it's the ground game, right? It's just like when you launch a product, you have to go out and make that happen. And so the difference of instead of targeting accounts, in this case, you're targeting your colleagues, you're talking to the people you met. And this is where I see most of the discipline fall off. People get nervous. They just start picking up the phone, calling people, running out. That's like telling your sales reps, if you went and got a GPO, to just go follow the blue H's. I mean, that's not going to work, right? Yeah. So you map out and write down everybody. Have a system of when you contacted them, when you're following up, and then methodically go after every single one of those. Because 83% of jobs, unfortunately, aren't found through guys like ourselves. It's actually through the network they already have. So reaching out to each of those individuals on a consistent basis, and if you're already at work, you have a role, you're just not happy in it, maybe you're only setting a goal to do 2 a week, maybe 1 a day. If it's all you're doing, maybe it's 10 a day. And then when you get them, there's 2 great questions to ask people, because most aren't going to know a job, of an opportunity. It's first, what's a great company that's exciting you? right?
Yeah.
Do you know someone there? Obviously you want an introduction. And then the second thing, if they don't have an answer for that, is, hey, you reached out because you respected them when you used to work together at J&J or whatever. Did they have someone they feel the same about?
Yeah.
Can they introduce you? And guess what? People are going to help, and they're going to want to help. So that, that's just synopsis. How to think about it, how to execute, has just been one of the biggest gaps in the ways we've been able to help a lot of candidates over time. But I'm sure there's some nuances in there and questions we have that have come up. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of setting your paradigm for this is how I'm going to attack it. And as you explain it, I'm thinking, hey, it's a lot of work. But to be successful, just like anything else, it's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
So I think having that upfront mindset of, hey, I'm going to take this seriously and spend the time. And I think if you are serious, especially at a high level about your job search, having that plan, that roadmap and paradigm shift is important and can help you at least get started, which for a lot of people is the hardest part.
Well, hey, I'm going to go back to my analogy of launching a product. Anyone that's tried to launch a new product into the market knows it takes twice as long and twice as much effort than you ever thought it would. And so don't be surprised. Yeah, if you're not initially getting callbacks or swarm or opportunities, and you're like, what's wrong with me? Yeah, stay after it. Because it does. It takes effort, it takes time. And then, there'll be that point you look up and you go, wow, I got 4 great offers. What do I do?
Yeah.
So I think it looks like we have some.
Yeah, let's dive in. I'll read them off and I'll take them over to you. So Greg Schmaltz, when you have a terrible experience with a company or a job and you leave after a short tenure, how do you respond to why did you leave this position without speaking poorly about that position? So how do you explain those shorter tenures in a good way?
I think that's difficult, right? I think you don't want to talk about that manager was terrible. You can talk about some of the facts. Many times I've heard it is, hey, I got into this role and, the opportunity they said, the reimbursement was there, actually wasn't there. And once I got in, I learned that. Or once I peeled back, they didn't have the money and the funding to actually do what we needed. And I think those are very tactical, tangible things, right? I've also had answers come back that I thought were very valid. Is, you know what? I wanted to try something different in my career. And now, once I was there, I realized that what I actually love is kind of the job that you have, and not why I'm talking to you, right? So I think both of those play well, and it happens. And I think it's just honesty, openness about the mistake, and taking ownership as your part in the problem. I didn't do enough for you. I should have asked more of this. It wasn't that that manager was terrible, because in their mind they're thinking, what's he going to say about me?
Right. Well, and I think it's being proactive about it. It's something that's going to come up. It's a question. It's going to be a concern, rather than sitting there and hoping they ask you about it to have that answer. It's like, hey, listen, I know I had a short tenure here. I want to talk to you about that, and then framing it in a positive way. Like you're talking about is important.
And this isn't what Greg asked, but it's part of this same thing. Is I've seen several candidates. They're great candidates, especially in the startup world, right? Where they have a couple different opportunities, 3 or 4 things where it's 1.5, 1 year, short tenures. When I actually have the conversation with them, it's like, well, that company got bought. That company lost all its funding. This company, and if I wouldn't have had the conversation, I would have thought they were just really a job hopper, right? Or something was wrong. So what I recommend in that case is be, open on that on the resume, right? If that's your reality, say, hey, I was with, XYZ and they were bought. And this one, they went bankrupt or whatever, like things that were obviously, explain that because otherwise you might not get an opportunity even to explain the problem if you don't put it up there up front.
Yeah.
So not what he asked, but just another tip that came to mind.
That's great. Let's dig back here. Yannick Lang asks, how would you recommend positioning yourself and your experience when you're looking to sell a product that's in a different vertical than what you're currently selling? So kind of like what you were talking about earlier. If you're currently in the cath lab, but you've got a buddy that you've seen that's killing it in oncology, and you want to make that transition. You've done great, you've had success, but you don't have the oncology experience or the word we hear all the time, relationships. How do you position yourself properly in that regard?
Yeah, it's a good question. Now, hey, there's a lot of universal truths in selling, in leading, in product management. So it kind of depends really what role you're in, how much value it's going to be. QA is probably less so than if you're a frontline seller, right? So it's going to vary on each one of those, how difficult it is. But realize also, remember I talked about that value proposition? If you spent 20 years in that cath lab, you've forgotten more things than most people know. And if you're competing now in oncology with someone that spent 20 years in oncology to get that role, it's going to be it's going to be a harder transition, right? Just so realize that up front. Okay. But you can also then do your research and show you're proactive to start really understand the market. So you're going after it. Reach out to some people in the space, right? Ask them for clinicians. See if you can talk to a major KOL in the area, right? I'm interested in oncology. Can you tell me more? People that want to learn, people are typically gracious with their time, right? So if you've shown you understand it, then by understanding it, you can juxtapose like, hey, I mean, this product is a diagnostic, right? Ours is a diagnostic. We targeted the large VA hospitals. This is your big targets, VAs. Like what are those equate? And this transition isn't as far as you think it is. And a lot of times a hiring manager who might have spent their entire career in oncology thinks it's miles apart.
Right.
But if you can help verbally show how they're alike, you're going to be more likely to win the day in that role.
Yeah, that opportunity. That's the words out of my mouth. I think it's a lot about the specific examples, and being able to not just say, "Oh, I've been successful in sales. I can be successful here," but giving those tangible. Hey, I've won this account. You're trying to get into that account. I might, I could still get you in, even though I don't know the product. So,
right.
And again, like I said earlier, hitting that objection up front and understanding that that's where you're weak. And like anything else, trying to overcome it. So,
He who says the objection first wins, typically, right?
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, cool. Renee, talk to me about when it's appropriate to talk to my current employer that I'm open to other opportunities. More specifically, is it okay to have my open to work on my LinkedIn profile visible to everybody without telling my manager why? This is a great one that I've actually been asked a few different times because you have the open to work, and sometimes you see it in the profile picture, and so it's a good question on when it's appropriate, and especially if you're gainfully employed, who sees it? How do you employ your employer seeing it?
Well, if you're the company you work with doesn't see it.
Yeah.
So that's first and foremost, right? It's not everybody looks in your profile. If they're your colleagues, your HR, your manager, when they log into LinkedIn, as long as they're part of the company, on their LinkedIn profile, they're not going to see that, right? Yep. Obviously, there's adjacencies, there's risk, et cetera. I will say if you're actively searching, as a recruiter, I'm sure Danny, you can attest to this. A lot of times you're going to filter by that. Might be the first people you touch. There's actually some benefits on our in-mails, right? For us to reach out to those individuals too. Yeah. So if you're serious, flip the switch, take the chance. It's going to have impact.
It's definitely going to get more volume. I know I've spoken to many candidates. I said right when they flipped it, it was like turning on the fire hose. And it was just coming in, because I think a lot of people do filter by that to see that. And I don't think it's probably one for most people where they overthink. Oh, the moment I flip it, they're going to see it and think I'm leaving. It's for a lot of people, it's just to see what's out there.
Right. I mean, just think to yourself, how many times have you looked through your colleague's LinkedIn profile recently?
Right.
It's not what you typically do, right? Yeah. So it can happen, sure, but the odds are less than you think. Guys, if you put a comment below, below in the chat, we're going to pull them up. So just taking questions, guys. So just keep giving us questions. We're setting them up, knocking them down. Yeah, so what else we got?
Awesome. Thanks everyone so far. Sarah, when I'm interviewing for a role, is it more important for me to be authentic to my personality, or should I match the hiring manager's energy? This is a great one that we talked about on a previous IMPROVING.Live that I think is important, because if you're a super bubbly person and you come in and the guy's just a little bit dry, you want to be yourself, but you also want to make sure you're not too overbearing. So how do you handle that problem?
So yeah, there's two. It's a great question, and I think there's two parts to it. One, I think you always need to have authenticity. You need to be yourself in this process because you could run the risk of being so far not yourself that you end up joining a company that doesn't match your attitude, and both people are going to be unhappy. Okay, so don't default too far. Don't leave that authenticity at the door. Be yourself. But human interaction and nonverbals mirroring is impactful. So if you're over the top on someone that's really reserved, it's going to be naturally off-putting. So be yourself, but use EQ. That emotional intelligence, and that will be your guiding light.
Yeah. I mean, I think the EQ is the most important, especially like we were saying earlier, we were talking about commercial roles. You in front of that manager, the first thing they're thinking is you in front of a customer and how is that going to interact? And a lot of the times the customer's not going to match your energy and how you're able to adapt, but that is important for your success in the role. I mean, really, even if you're not commercial, it's probably still an important thing to have.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Let's dig back in here. Natalie, in retrospect, what lessons have you learned from the past successes or failures that have been instrumental into your growth, and how do you approach your role today? I like that one. So it's more about you personally, Joe. I'll flip it to you. What would you say is related to job searching, some successes, some failures you've had personally, and how you've learned from them?
Yeah. So my first stretch of my career, I was over 15 years with one company. Had a great track record, great run. Left there, tried to do a startup, didn't work. So then I was back in the search. And that comment of it takes twice as long and twice as much effort. I wish I would have heard that, because there's a point of like, what's wrong with me? And I also didn't have the concept of executing with it like it was, a product. That follow up, that discipline of reaching out to people, that having everything honed in. And so I think I probably could have missed some opportunities on doing that. It's part of the reason, I would say a big reason that, we really passionate about doing this, because I don't want people to stub their toe like I did when I was doing the search. Now, arguably, I might have not been here, so this worked out well. God was watching out for me in that perspective. But I'm not sure that's always the case, and I want to make sure that everyone understands what the activities they can do to set themselves apart and put their best foot forward to be successful. I mean, we've got tons of videos too, on our FloodGate Futures program that people can access totally free, so they don't stub their toe on any step of this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you just said about there's a lot of people, like we were talking earlier, in that position where they've had a long career, they're on the job search, they think they're just gonna they've got a great resume, accomplishments. I think they're going to click apply to the first 3 roles, get interviews, and have 3 offers. And then when that doesn't happen, you're sitting there like, geez, is it just me? Did I do something wrong? So having that understanding that it's going to take twice as long, you're not going to get as much traction as you probably think right up front, will help you mentally get that trash out of your head and move forward and not let it affect your attitude when you're heading into interviews and things like that. So that's important.
Yeah, one, I think is something else. Yeah, that kind of, there was a couple of roles that I wasn't real excited about. I was just kind of kicking the tires. But then once I remember one that once I found out about it, I was pretty excited. But you know what? I didn't come into it with that. I didn't give it the prep ahead of time. And, I think I even take the initial screening call like I was at a park. Right. Like, it didn't. And so I didn't progress because I didn't put my best foot forward, and it could have been a great opportunity. So my suggestion is, if you're engaged in it, do your absolute best, because you'd be better off to say, hey, you know what? I appreciate it. It's not for me now that I know more later, than to realize that it was your dream job and it didn't show up the way you should have.
Yeah. I mean, and we say it all the time, interviewing is like anything else. It's a muscle. The more you do it. So even if it's not something you're super excited about, going in and preparing like it is something will help you in those ones that you are excited.
Totally. It's great practice.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, yep.
Awesome. Love it. All right, George, I need to develop a brag book. How important do you think that is? Is it cringy to request feedback or testimonials via a LinkedIn post? He works for a larger MedTech company supporting an external sales team, most of which he's not connected with on LinkedIn, so probably doesn't have as close, LinkedIn connection or personal relationship with. So I guess to start, the brag book, how important do you think that is, and how do you start with that?
It's fun. It's really interesting. That's a part of interviewing that's changed. I would say in the early 2000s, like if you didn't have a book of your accolades and things when you showed up in an interview, game over.
Yeah.
It kind of has died. I mean, I don't think having more materials ever hurts you. Right. So I don't think being over prepared, having a 30, 60, 90, it's kind of like wearing a suit. No one's ever gotten upset with somebody because they were overdressed.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but is it absolute requirement anymore? It's really not. I'm not seeing it that much in the market.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt you either. I think the other thing that I saw George act was the LinkedIn, and having testimonials and referrals and reference on your LinkedIn profile. Yeah, those are great, right? And that's easy. Just go ask some people. It's got even a mechanism. Ask them, then call them up and go, hey, I sent this request. It really mean a lot if someone is like you put a couple comments on there. Because that is something that people do when they're doing their research and they're looking that could have impact. So
yeah, and like I said, it's the webpage. I mean, there's those testimonials at the bottom of the webpage. That's important. And I don't believe, 99% sure, you have to be connected with the individuals on LinkedIn. So even if it's folks from the past, as long as you know their name and can obviously find them, you should be able to request that testimonial, even if you're not connected. But of course, connect with them as well. It doesn't hurt. So, okay, cool. Mark, what advice can you give to a retired military veteran looking to get into med device? Someone who may not fit the mold and doesn't have the same level of experience. I love this one.
Mm-hmm.
And we've of course got Dave O'Hearn, leads our military to MedTech here at FloodGate, but excited to hear your answer to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he alluded to it. I mean, we believe that there is enough crossovers, Mark, of someone that is military into med device, that we have one of our colleagues, a former lieutenant colonel, retired as well, that is leading the charge on that transition. And we've got even a downloadable on that military to MedTech that you can download there, Mark. So hopefully that can help. But you know how to lead, you know how to get through adversity, grit. You can learn quickly, do great working in ambiguity, understand structures. All of those things are 100% transferable, Mark. And there's a lot of companies that are looking for that. Now, what you need to expect is you're not going to start off as, the senior sales rep or, a senior level. You're going to have to start at an associate level or an entry level in that and target the right jobs and be comfortable and realize that. Now, with success, you can quickly go up from there. But there is going to be an entry point to be able to access it. But at that entry point, there is a lot of companies that are looking for your skills.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend reaching out to obviously Joe or myself or Dave. And we're happy to have that conversation. We do have some select clients we worked with and some that we even know of that don't work with that look for that. And we'd love to get you connected up with those now or in the future. So great question and love that. Esther, when applying for a position internally and the position pays less than your current salary, what factors should you take into consideration when applying and accepting? Interesting. So if you're applying to a role internally in your organization, maybe in a different business unit or just a different role, I guess, if it's a less than a current salary, what factors should you consider when you're applying and accepting a role?
Yeah. Esther, since you're considering, I'm thinking you're looking long term, right? So really, the time I would look to do that is if that puts you in a different trajectory. Like even if you have to go into, I always say the river analogy, right? You have to jump into a river a little bit upstream, but it's faster moving. Mm-hmm. In a year you're going to be farther than where you sit right now. right? So if you find yourself in a pool, in an eddy, and you need to jump over and take a few steps back to get into that fast stream, I think that's a great thing, right? But you need to make sure that that's truly what it is internally. And I would say, when leaders, and I've done this, and I've interviewed a lot of leaders, when they're looking for those individuals to promote up, to tap on the shoulder, it's those ones that a lot of times have stuck their hands up for the maybe least desirable. I don't know if that's this case, roles or activities. And they said, hey, I'll do this. Because when they know someone's committed enough to do the hard things, that when there's that good thing, they're the first ones that gets a bite of the apple. Yeah. So don't know if that's your situation, but hopefully that's helped you a little bit.
No, I think that's great insight. I mean, sometimes, staying within your organization, you like the company, the mission, the people, you'd rather take that step back to move forward than leave and go somewhere else for more money where you don't know how it's going to fit. So I think that's a great question. Yeah,
because you got a lot of internal credibility, right? And so that's a good point. Yep.
Ashley, when's a good time during the interview process to ask about compensation and benefits, et cetera? That's a great question.
This used to be like, oh, don't wait till the end. No, I mean, kind of fine. We always get it out front. I mean, way out front. Because the last thing you want to do is go through this whole thing and realize there's this massive compensation chasm that we can't cross. That's just wasted time for the candidate, the clients, everybody involved. We usually vet that pretty early, what the needs are, right? And so we're always asking. I think transparency is the right thing because and here's an interesting thing too. I've seen many candidates that way overinflate their compensation and thinking that, it's going to give me a great negotiation capability when it comes to salary. But unfortunately, what the hiring manager sees is like, well, they make that. Why would they ever want to take a step back for this job? I'm not interested in talking to them. We're like, wait, But so just be honest, be transparent. I mean, you're starting a career. Last thing you want to do is start it with gamesmanship. That's my take.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think early on in the process, everyone understands that we're in this not just for the money, but it's a big part. So whether it's the recruiter, the hiring manager, whoever you're asking, being respectful about asking is probably not sit down at the table. Hey, by the way, what's this pay? But when you get to the end, I think it's always appropriate to say, hey, I want to make sure we're in line so that I can be excited and we can be excited about each other.
Well, I kind of want to know, hey, what is, as my current, what's the average compensation or how do you account? I find it out early. Yep. Just you kind of want to know, is it even in the ballpark to waste your time, right? Yeah. And then understand the kind of company you're going with, right? So if it's a startup, it's a new position, new role, they might not really know, and then they might not be able to offer as much and then have equity. And if you're in the position where you've got enough cash flow to carry you, know what that minimum cash flow you kind of need, because a lot of companies, if you're in the startup world, they'd be more apt to give you equity, which with success could be far more lucrative. But make sure you know what not what you made before, but what you can live with if you want to take that shot, right? And again, you're doing a lot more due diligence. Treat it like an investor in that case, not just an employee. Yeah, because you're technically investing your your work, your money, and your working capital too.
Cool. All right, John. What are your perspectives on coaching candidates with rich experience beyond first-line rep positions who are open to roles as individual contributors versus team leaders? Rationale could be various, more geographical preference, breaking into a larger blue chip med device company, et cetera. So, making a career change, not right in the beginning, sort of more late in your career, or maybe you've held higher level roles and you're looking to get back into a rep role. How do you properly position that? I think is what he's asking as you're moving through the interview process.
Yeah. It's obviously, John, really smart. That's a big objection you get a lot. It's like, hey, why does he want to take a step back? You got to hit that up front and have some very salient reasons. Hey, you know what? I realized I've reflected through this transition, and I always sold clients. I had to go sell the IDNs. I had to create these presentations, and reflecting on it, that was the part of the job I loved. And that's why I want to do that today. I mean, something that's very tangible and understandable and logical will help overcome that objection, but it's going to be a little harder to be noticed as well. So if let's say you're a regional manager and your title was, regional VP, use the lesser of the title, right? Because, even if that's what they called you, it's a little lower, it's a regional manager. Well, okay, what did that mean? Well, that's, I sold half the time and then I led 4 people. Oh, okay. Well, that's not far off from what we're going to have you do. So those would be the 2 suggestions.
I agree. It's like we were saying earlier, hitting it up front, having great stories, examples specifically of why you want to make that change and what that's going to look like, and ultimately sticking to it, because it is something that sometimes you can't overcome for whatever reason. There's a company that has that perspective, but sticking to that discipline of doing it that way every time until you find that one that's right.
Yeah. So, last question, huh, Danny? It's gone fast.
I think we've got one more here, and then if any other come through, but I think this is going to be the last one. Should I invest in interviewing with companies that don't have an open role? That's a good question. Many large companies do this to have candidates in the pipeline that have been thoroughly vetted. So there's not necessarily an opening in Tampa, Florida, but I'm really interested in this company and I could get a conversation with the hiring manager. Is it worth my time to have that interview while there's not an open role?
100%. I'm going back to selling, right? I'm going back to launching a product, right? If you have, a target that you would love, your skills align with, and you're excited by their mission, you're excited by their products, people there, absolutely. Network, work it, have calls, have conversations, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. Right? I've had many times they're like, well, we haven't hired for 6 months, and then all of a sudden 2 people leave, or the board just approves a new allocation. Things change all the time, and you want to be in front of those right people. And when that happens, when serendipity strikes, you need to be ready for it. And that takes being visible and investing a little time on the places you want to be up front.
Yeah, if you want an analogy, it's like when you walk into the grocery store and the guy standing there with the little samples of fudge or cheese or something. I didn't come for that, but he gives it to me and I taste it. Now I buy it. So I think when someone finds good talent, they're always going to find a room for them on the team, whether it's now or in the near future. So
I think Renee, he's saying you're like 12-year-old cheddar that you just can't. Once you have a taste, you can't do it without.
That's okay.
So
good. Well, I don't know if we've got.
I think we'll actually have time for a couple more questions.
Yeah.
All right.
What's the average? This is a great question. I actually get asked this all the time, Natalie. What is the average time frame, start to finish, for the interview process?
That's a good question. It's going to vary. It's going to vary company to company and their speed. Now, I found if I'm advising companies, which we do a lot of times, what's the most they should do? And in fact, Google did a big look and they said more than 4, there's a diminished return on the number of people in interviews, right? So I always say it's the hiring manager, the one up and one to the side. That's, I think, is a great amount of interviews to expect. But every company is going to do a little different. And it depends what role you're going to be in. If you're an executive role, you're going to meet with every board member. You're going to meet with a lot of the VPs. There's a lot of touch points in there, right? So it's going to vary in the size of the organization. But at very least, you're going to expect at least probably 4 hours of interviewing time. The good news is, and a lot more people post-pandemic, there's the plus of it, are good with the video. So there's a lot less. I got to fly to corporate. I got to fly to Dallas. I got to fly here. You might have the one trip to meet somebody, but the other ones you're doing it digitally, right, which saves a lot of time.
Yeah, saves a lot of time. So, good. Greg, what would you rather recommend a new college grad to do if they're looking for a career in medical sales? We get this all the time too. How do you break in, or at least start that path when you graduate college?
Go sell something, then do well, right? So I say go parallel paths, right? go after the opportunities you want. There's associate, they're called associate reps. If you guys don't know, that's a kind of nomenclature for entry level, right? In the medical device world. So go after those, but in parallel, go get a job with ADP. Go get a job with, a company that has great sales training, that's B2B, and crush it. Because if you're successful in those environments after getting that training, you're going to be well positioned. And when you keep hitting those same medical device companies, and now your resume looks better, when they get an opening, they're like, one, this person's been in front of me, and two, look at them, they've just crushed it. I want to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the outside seller role, whatever it may be, whether it's a payroll, facility services, car, anything that is tangible. That is a complex sell, ideally multiple stakeholders so that it's translatable to medical device. But numbers on paper that say I've been successful speak better than anything else. So.
Yeah, and really what they're looking for is they want to make sure that this individual, that they've got the grittiness, that they can take the punch, they can get back up and do it themselves again without someone having to tell them to do it. They're doing it because they have it here.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that puts the numbers right to it.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. Okay, Greg. Oh no, that was already Greg. All righty, anonymous. For companies and positions where you do not have a personal referral, and also their LinkedIn job listing does not have the talent acquisition person identified, how would you recommend following up on your submissions after a reasonable period of time? I would love to follow up and showcase those skills and interests, but I'm not sure how to reach them. That's a good question. So you posted a job. I don't know who exactly it is posting it. Maybe it's even posted to a recruiter or something like that. I applied, haven't heard back. How do I follow up?
Yeah, I think use what information you have. And it's not about a follow-up, maybe always about the position. There's a quote unquote black holes, right? If there's a company you really like, that is interesting to you, I always recommend you can always find people that work for that company in the adjacency, whether that's in the area you're in, whether it's in similar roles that you want, etc., and reach out to them and explain your situation. It's like, hey, I've loved what you guys have done in the oncology space and the way you're curing cancer. And I'd love to be a part of your company. I would love to understand a little more about your day in, day out. Can you help? And I always tell people, use the word help, because people will help people when you actually say that. Don't say, I want to know if you can help me understand what makes it great and how I might be able to join the company. Ask that of everybody you can adjacently. And guess what? One of them might be the actual one that's hiring the job. You don't know. But at very least, when you're having the conversation, you make a connection. They're going to be, I just applied to this one. Do you know whose job that is? Oh yeah, that's Jim's. Let me send him an email introduction. Make sure you're on his radar. I can tell you, as a executive in medical device, I had a couple occasions where I was the president of the division, and I had frontline openings that were, a couple of people in between. They'd find me and send me an email. Was I upset about it? You know what I did? I forwarded that email to the hiring manager and said, this person's got a little bit of energy and a little bit of that. You need to go talk to them.
It's a conversation.
That's it. Why not?
Yeah.
Just going back to the selling analogy, right? When you're going in, you want to, you're a product. You don't go in and just try to get to the surgeon. You're going to go talk to the nurse. You're going to go talk to materials management. How is this any different? Same thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, that's great. And those people are always, you can find them. So I love it. That's a great question. Awesome. Well, I think that's most of what we got. We're running up to the end here. That was great. I think.
I hope you guys have gained something there, picking our brains, and I appreciate you posting. There's some excellent questions. We're going to be coming back to this because I know there's going to be new questions and new people, and so we want to be accessible to help give the years of experience both as a hiring manager and recruiters, right? That deal with it all the time, a little bit of insight so you can find that role to really improve your lives, because that is our mission, right? Which is improving lives, but we just happen to do it by uniting great people with great companies. We really hope this has helped accomplish that mission.
Thanks for joining us.